This is the updated GWM Ute, and this Cannon range has seen some big and important changes. There's a new, larger capacity turbo diesel engine with more power and more torque, and it can do more towing as well. There's been other changes made to this vehicle, including some price adjustments, some up, some down, and some cancelled. So I'll tell you everything you need to know about this model range and the best alternatives to it in this review. So thanks for subscribing, and let's get to it. GWM has increased the entry price point to the new Cannon range. And yes, it's called Cannon now, not GWM Ute Cannon as it was before. I think that will make it a little simpler for consumers. And the entry-level cab chassis model has been dumped, but the opening model, the Luxe, is still very assertively priced, even though it is a bit less affordable than it was before. At just over $40,000 drive away, you are getting so much for your money in that entry-level version. Things like LED lights, 18-inch alloy wheels, the chrome sports bar at the back just like this one. You've got power folding side mirrors, a spray-in bed liner, keyless entry, fake leather trim, single zone climate control, a wireless phone charger, and a 12.3-inch touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly, 6-speaker sound system. There's a 7-inch digital instrument cluster. You even get auto wipers in that entry-level version. And then there's this one here, which is the Ultra. It adds a few $1,000s to the price point, and it has all that same stuff, but a little bit more as well. An electric sunroof, there's rear privacy glass, you get leather accented seats, so a little step up in terms of the trim inside. Those front seats are also heated and ventilated, as well as being electrically adjustable. You've got a heated steering wheel, there's a USB port for a dash cam, there's ambient lighting inside, and this one also gets an auto-dimming rear view mirror. Up from there, if you spend just a couple of grand more, you can get into the Vanta, which was previously a special edition, but now is part of the range. It adds basically a black pack on the outside. You're getting 18-inch wheels in black, some exterior finishing in black as well, including the sports bar. And at the top, there's the XSR, which is the most off-road focused version in the lineup, and it does have a price reduction for this updated model range. It's still got plenty of great off-roady stuff though. Hopefully I'll get to do an off-road review of it at a later date. But in this review, we're just going to go drive this one on the road and see what it's like. But before we get to that, I want to tell you some great alternatives that you might want to consider. If you're thinking budget ute, you don't want to buy a Chinese ute, you have to go and have a look at the KGM SsangYong Musso. It's got a big tub available if you choose the XLV model, and there's 3.5 ton towing across the range. Diesel engine, which is punchy, and a nice interior finish as well, which was updated recently. It has a fair few features that you will appreciate and none of the annoying stuff that you might not like as well. So it could definitely be worth having a look at. Another one you might want to check out if you're on a budget is the Jack T9. I did a review of it very recently and called it the JAC all the way through, but it's actually Jack, like Jack of all trades. It's not necessarily a Jack of all trades. It has lower towing capacity than this and some other utes in the segment, but it does have plenty of usability and payload, and it's a really great tradie truck if you are shopping on a budget or if you're just buying some for your apprentices or your fleet. So it could be a very worthwhile consideration if that's you. And finally, Mitsubishi has just added a bunch of more affordable versions of the Triton. You can now get a dual cab 4x4 automatic version of the Triton in base trim for about 50 grand. So it might not necessarily suit everyone's budget, but hey, Mitsubishi is a very well-known brand and is known for reliability too. So it could be worth considering if that is your priority. I'd love to know what you think though. Hit me up in the comments section below. Would you choose a Triton? Would you choose this or something else? Let me know. There have been some visual changes to the updated Cannon, including this new, more truck-like front-end design. I think it actually looks pretty good, a bit more Toyota-y in my mind, don't you think? And in terms of the overall dimensions, it's basically the same as it was before. So the standard versions have a 5.4 meter length. The XSR model is just a little longer. Wheelbase is the same. I'll put all the dimensions on your screen now so you can see for yourself. And let's talk payload while we're considering that. Now, 995 kg. Now, 995 kg for all but the top spec XSR, which has some off-roady bits and has a lower payload of 875. And when we're talking weights, I'll put the GWM on your screen for all versions. Again, a bit of a difference with the XSR and the GCM. So the gross combination mass, yep, same, little difference between the grades at the bottom and the one at the top. Now, all versions come with 750 kilo unbraked towing capacity, 3.5 ton towing now for this model, and that is a 500 kilo improvement over the previous version, thanks in part to that bigger engine. So what about accessories? Well, the sports bar roll bar thing on the back there in the tub is standard. You can get roof rails on most grades, and you can accessorize roof racks if you want. And you can also get a selection of tonneau covers, so a hard tonneau and a roller tonneau. And yes, I mean, those wheel arch flares maybe aren't as aggressive as they could be, but hey, you could maybe fix that in the aftermarket as well. Now let's have a look at the rear. Has been a change to the tailgate with GWM very, very proudly emblazoned there with very big text. Seems to be one of the things the Chinese brands are focusing right now on. Now let me show you something back here. That's locked. And if I press the unlock button on the key, that's right, it's part of the central locking system, the tailgate, which is a bonus if you are going to fit one of those tonneau covers or a canopy. Means you will be locking things up when you lock your ute. And as you probably just saw, it has an assisted tailgate, so it won't just slam down like some other cheap utes. Some other expensive utes, in fact. And there's also this amazing little inclusion, a step, so you can easily step up into the tub of the vehicle. It's got a pretty good weight rating for that step. And let's have a look up here in the tub and see what we are working with. I'll put the dimensions on your screen now. And no, you can't fit an Aussie pallet between the wheel arches, but you can still fit plenty in the back of this vehicle. And you've got some good inclusions like tie down points, as you can see at the front there and at the rear, but there is no light in the back, which might be something you want to consider. No power outlets either. But you do get the assisted tailgate, which works when you're putting the tailgate up as well. So let me do that now. Put this ladder away, close it up and have a look underneath here. Yep, you've got a full-size alloy spare wheel underneath the body of the vehicle, which is a nice bonus. So practicality-wise, yeah, I think it's doing plenty of things right. Now, sadly, this vehicle obviously doesn't have a tow bar fitted, but if you leave a comment below, I might be able to arrange a towing test at a later date. I'd love to know if that's what you'd like to see. Okay, so if you're thinking of stepping out of your existing GWM Ute and into this new one, well, you'll be impressed by some of the changes that have been made. It is a more usable and livable space and also has a bit more of a techie feel to it as well. Now, there are some elements which are maybe a bit too cute for some Ute buyers. I don't know whether many will love that, for instance, but there are some really great features like this wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto now offered on the 12.3-inch screen. It's relatively quick. There's a little bit of lag between the phone and the screen. And there's one other thing that is not perfect about this setup. It's that, well, if you want to make adjustments to the climate control, for instance, while there are buttons down there, if you want to change the temperature, you still have to go back to the home screen and then adjust it on the screen itself, which, I mean, it's just a couple of screen presses away, but it could be better in terms of the integration between CarPlay and the home screen. At least though, you do have the major controls here if you want to make adjustments for your recirc, if you want to turn on your seat heating, then you can do that on the screen as well. As you can see there, that's your climate control screen. And let's have a look more deeply at this screen. There's a car settings page that you can go to, and if you want to turn off things like your front collision sensitivity, your lane assist, your rear side assist, or your traffic sign recognition, you have to do all that, well, most of it, through this sub-menu set up on the screen. And that traffic sign recognition system will default back on every single time, as will the emergency lane keeping. But there is a drop-down tab at the top, so you can turn off emergency lane keeping like so. I just wish that you could configure it so that, well, you could have your speed sign recognition system there as well. Now back to the home screen, as you can see, there's not a whole lot to it. It is relatively simple, and that's probably to its benefit because it's not the most interesting or user-friendly screen in a few different ways, as I've mentioned. But it's still there, and you've also got this, well, digital instrument cluster in front of the driver as well, with this part of it being the digital finish and the edge bits being, well, not digital and actually kind of hard to see. So in certain light situations, as you can see right now, it can be hard to see where your fuel gauge is at, for instance. And also this design means that, well, it looks like you've got stuff illuminated on your warnings lights more than you might actually have on your warnings lights. So we're in park at the moment, my seatbelt's undone, but yeah, you can see there you've got the outlines and silhouettes of all the other warnings, and it just doesn't look that good to me. Now let's have a look at the steering wheel. So you've got some decent controls on the wheel itself. You've got your media stuff on this side, hang up button for the phone call, and this one here will take you onto the screen with the safety assist technology, so you can more easily get to it, which is good. And here you'll find you've got a steering wheel heating button, you've got voice control if you want to talk to the car and get things changed up, and you've got your controls for that driver info screen right there, so you can easily jump through some of the menus and configure some stuff if you wish. So for instance, you can change this design so it looks a little different, kind of like the other Utes I've driven in the past, but it certainly isn't as wow factor as BYD's interior in my mind, but it could be perfectly fine for you. And let's have a look at some of the other elements to this cabin. So yes, wireless phone charger. It has a cooling system as well. So underneath it's ventilated, so it will keep your phone cool in theory. There's also, there's also USB-C port there, USB-A port. If you don't want to use wireless CarPlay, you can plug in. There's a 12-volt port there as well. Now, this shifter is an interesting looking unit. It looks a bit alienish, but it will also take a little bit of getting used to. Your park button's on top. You can shift it by pulling on the sides, and you've also got an electronic park brake, a couple of 12-volt options there as well, your drive mode selector too, and your rear differential lock is there. If you want to put it into four-wheel drive low range, you'll press that button and it can do the job for you. Back here you'll find you've got a little tray that you can slide back and forth, so you've got cup holders which are couple of different levels, one for your coffee, one for your bottle of drink obviously, and down there's also a fair amount of storage, and you can open it up so it will remain cool in there too. There's a shelf in front of the passenger, which is a nice bonus. There's also a decent sized glove box, bottle holders in the doors which are very usable, and these leather accented seats are pretty comfortable. They're electrically adjustable in this spec for both the driver and the passenger. And there's other great features as well that you now get, including an opening sunroof. You've got these vanity mirrors, but still no illumination, if that matters, I don't know. There's a ticket holder for your parking there, an auto dimming rear vision mirror, and up here you'll also see there's a USB port, so you can quickly and easily connect up a dash cam without having messy cables everywhere. And up here there's a sunglasses holder, so not in the traditional spot, but at least you've got one. So I think generally, yeah, it's an improvement on the previous one, and it feels pretty comfy and has a fair amount of great features. Maybe missing a few storage options, but not too bad at all. Now let's check out the second row space and see what it's like. Okay, so before I get into there and show you what the space is like, I just want to show you some of the features that you've got in the back seat here. So you have a 60/40 split fold seat. So that means that if you've got stuff that you don't want in the tub, you can put it in there out of sight and maybe a bit more secure, and that's a nice bonus to have. And yes, you've also got a flip down backrest as well, so you can see right there that you've got proper top tethers behind the seats instead of one of those silly loop ones up behind the seat in the middle. And that means that, well, you should be able to get a pretty secure and safe position for your child seat if you're fitting one. Okay, this seat is set for my driving position. I am 6 foot tall, so not the smallest unit, and I do have plenty of space here, plenty of footroom as well, more than lots of the other dual cab Utes, I would say. And when it comes to headroom back here, yep, it's not too bad if you're sitting back, but just be aware there is an intrusion because of the inclusion of the sunroof, which does mean that this roof section does push down a little bit, but the base model doesn't have a sunroof, so if that matters to you, it might be worth considering that. Now, you've got grab handles on the sides here, little coat hooks too, Up here you'll see there is a light, but it's not on the edges, so it might not be ideal for parents, for instance. There are mat pockets on both seat backs. There are also directional air vents, which is a nice bonus. And you've got USB charge ports, a little storage tray. Thankfully, the transmission tunnel doesn't eat too much into the cabin. There are bottle holders in the doors, soft elbow pads as well. So nice little inclusion that. Some have hardware and plasticky bits in the back. Sure, this bit's a bit plasticky and so are the grab handles to help you in, but it is a dual cab ute made for work and play, I guess. And you've got these ISOFIX points in the window seats. As I mentioned, you've got the top tethers behind the seats rather than in the middle at the top there, which is a nice bonus. There's a flip down armrest, but no cup holders. I don't know whether that's a deal breaker, but it might be something you want to keep in mind. But otherwise, I am impressed by the backseat experience here. It's very accommodating and the seat's actually pretty comfy too. Under the bonnet of the updated GWM Cannon is a 2.4 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine. That's bigger than the old one, which had a 2 litre, and it's got bigger outputs as well. You'll see the numbers on your screen now, and that is a nice little kick up the backside compared to its predecessor. Now, all versions come with a 9-speed automatic transmission, and all versions are 4-wheel drive, but it runs as an on-demand all-wheel drive system, so you don't have to choose between 2H and 4H. It will figure it out for you. It's just when you get into the rough stuff, then you can select low range. All versions also come with a rear locking differential, and you can get a front locking diff in the top spec model, which is more off-road focused. And if you want to see an off-road review, stay tuned and hit subscribe and ring the bell, and I'll be doing one when I get a chance to drive the XSR later on. Alright, so what is this updated version like to drive? Well, obviously the biggest consideration here will be the engine, and I have to say, it does feel a lot perkier than the existing 2 litre. This 2.4 litre has seen sizable increases to the power and torque, and it does have quite a bit more up and go about it. It's very urgent in the way that it responds. So long as you'll be on the turbo lag threshold, there is a bit of a lag at lower speeds when you're pulling away from a standstill, but it is certainly smarter feeling and quicker to respond in terms of the acceleration. And the 9-speed automatic transmission seems to do a pretty good job of harnessing the grunt as well. It's maybe a little laggy at times, especially at lower speeds again, but I don't think it's too bad. And I reckon you will find that this will agree with your driving style. If you've driven diesel utes before, you'll settle into this pretty easily, I would say. And speaking of the fact that it is just a diesel ute, and those sorts of vehicles do have specific characteristics when it comes to the drive experience, it is a body on frame ladder chassis vehicle, so it's made for, well, hard work. And sometimes the ride can be hard work when you're unladen. If you aren't loaded up all the time, you might find that the ride, as you can hear in my voice, is a little bit shaky. I think that it's not the worst I've experienced, but it's maybe not as good as that Jack Ute I drove a couple of weeks ago, which had a smoother ride than I was expecting. Now, there's some other considerations in terms of this powertrain too, with the way that the power gets down to the ground. So, as I said, it's an on-demand all-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive system. So it will choose whether it needs to engage the front axle or just send the power to the back. And I mean, it's okay in a lot of situations. It's not perfect though. It can feel at times like if you're accelerating out of a corner that it's a bit scrabbly, and it's not a deal breaker, but it just drives differently to some of the other utes in this segment. That's just something I reckon you have to keep in mind if you haven't driven the GWM Ute in the past. It might take some getting used to. And it does mean though that if the road is wet or you find yourself on gravel, you don't have to think about switching into high range 4-wheel drive. And it also means that if you park on the grass, well, there's a good chance you won't end up just ripping holes in your turf. It's not the most dynamic vehicle to drive. It's not trying to be, but I would, well, wish for better tyres. The Giddy rubber that's applied as standard to this vehicle, it's okay, but it's not much better than okay. You can hear Scrabble quite a lot, and it doesn't have the grippiest responsiveness in corners. I know it's a diesel dual cab ute, but some other tyres will give you better grip. It's pretty simple. But also it has really soft front suspension, so that can exacerbate things when you've got less grip, because if you are turning a corner and you go over a bump while you're doing it, it can feel like everything gets a little bit out of shape. It just doesn't have the same sort of balance or control as some other utes in this segment. As you can hear, sometimes the transmission will also hang on to gears maybe longer than you're expecting it to. I mean, it's got 9 gears to play with. I would, in some instances, expect it to shift up a little quicker, but maybe it's using its logic to figure out the gradients and so forth, and also try and make things as efficient and smooth as they can be. So that is good to note, in my opinion. It's a good transmission. Not the greatest, not as good as some of the others in this ute segment, and it's a good engine. Again, not the greatest, but it's also a Great Wall ute that costs almost half as much as some of those more highly fancied brands. So I think in that instance, if you're thinking about it that way, you are going to get more for your money. And I mean, you could get 2 of them if you really wanted to for the same sort of price as a high spec Ranger. So you tell me what you'd do. So let's talk fuel consumption for the updated Cannon Ute range. And every single model in this lineup has the same official combined cycle fuel consumption figure of 8.4 litres per 100 Ks. That is perfectly acceptable for a diesel dual cab 2.4 litre with 4-wheel drive and an auto transmission. Not game changing, but yeah, like I said, perfectly acceptable. And if you're wondering what I've seen over my time testing this vehicle, now I've been doing the stuff that you might actually end up doing with your ute, as opposed to the stuff that you might want to be doing with your ute, like off-roading and towing. Just been doing commuting, urban driving, the daily stuff that you might end up having to do. And here's what I've seen on your screen now. That is, again, relatively acceptable. Not game-changing, but perfectly fine, I would say. And it also has a decent tank capacity, 78 litres, so that should mean decent driving range between refills, and there's no AdBlue to consider as well, so you don't have to fill something else up, but there is a diesel particulate filter which has a burn-off switch if you need to initiate it. This updated version of the Cannon will come with a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, just like the previous one. It's from 2021, so it's maybe not the freshest rating, but that actually is to its advantage in some ways, because under the modern standards, you need to have lots of annoying technology. This one has still some annoying tech, but not all of it, which is good in my opinion. So you've got things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's adaptive cruise control. There's lane keeping assistance and emergency lane keeping. You've also got blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. And there's a driver fatigue monitoring system, but it's not one of the ones that looks at your eyes. So it's not camera based, and that means it's not as annoying. There is still also a camera based speed sign recognition system, which can get on your nerves if you live somewhere where the speed limits change a lot, like where I live, and that might actually be pretty annoying. The lane keeping's not too bad in general driving either. Now, the entry-level version comes with a reversing camera and rear parking sensors as standard, but if you step up from that base model into any of the ones above it, you're getting things like front parking sensors added on and a surround view camera system, which is one of the best in the ute segment, with a fantastic see-through view, and you can adjust the view so you can see different elements of the car too. Now, when it comes to your airbag coverage, there are 7 fitted. You've got dual front side, a front center airbag to prevent head clashes in the event of a side impact crash, and curtain coverage for both rows of seats. So safe? Yeah. GWM offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is better than plenty of the utes in the segment. Now, you're also getting 5 years of roadside assistance included, which is nice, and there's a 5-year cap price servicing plan as well. But just keep this in mind. Your first service is at 6 months or 5,000 kilometres, and then it's every 12 months and 10,000 kilometres. So it's more needy than some of the other utes in the segment, but it is relatively well priced per service. But if you are going to to do a lot of distance, then it might add up that you'll have to pay quite a bit more for servicing this vehicle compared to some of the others out there. Like a Nissan Navara has 20,000k service intervals. So if you're a distance commuting tradie, it might be a better choice if that's your priority. But I'd love to know what you think about those service intervals. Are they a deal breaker? Let me know. If you need a dual cab diesel ute and you don't have heaps of money to spend on it, this is the one I reckon you should put at the top of your shopping list. It's very impressive for the money. You're getting plenty of good stuff on the inside, plenty of space as well, a practical tub, 3.5 ton towing, and a much more enjoyable engine than the previous one. So tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. Is there anything that would turn you off this vehicle? I'd love to know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you when I see you.